My goodness. So you have been appointed the personal representative of an estate in North Carolina. Perhaps you were appointed there as the executor due to the last will and testament, or perhaps you decided to step up, or the court appointed you for, or seeing that you may be the most responsible, connected, vested, interested party to help settle the affairs of the estate. Oh my. And now you also recognize that there is property that is connected to the estate that you, as the administrator or as the executor, most commonly referred to as the personal representative, now you have the responsibility of dealing with or settling the real estate in there. And there are many things that you can do with it, but that's what we're going to look at today. So what's going on, everyone? Let me take a step back. Again, I'm Courtney Rollins, the host of the Life and Transitions Experts podcast. And here we focus mainly on probate and real estate in probate, but we do expand out to different areas where people are impacted by transitions in life, and professionals who are there to help serve and help navigate those transitions are worth their weight in gold. And so for today's podcast, we want to look at if you find yourself being a personal representative, or perhaps you're in my place where you're trying to support and help families going through the process, particularly when they have real estate, why would someone consider selling their property to a cash buyer if they're going through the probate process? So let's take a look. We're going to look at 5 different things that you either consider for yourself, or again, if you're in my position, you may be able to share with personal representatives so they can see some of the value that you may be provide. So we're talking about Durham, North Carolina. Now, Durham, North Carolina, unless it's specific in the will, real estate, you have to have permission to be able to manage the estate's affairs with your letters of administration or letters of testament. And however, it doesn't mean that the actual property has to be probated, but that doesn't mean that you won't have to manage or do something with the property. For instance, there's many cases where when someone owes funds or owes money, or decedent owes money, quite often if they own real estate, the most viable option for the estate is to sell the property so that they can pay off those claims. Also, though, there's also folks who inherit property and they're looking for an inheritance, and one way to liquidate assets is to sell property so that you can distribute it to the heirs. So let's look at 5 reasons why you may want to sell to a cash buyer in these situations. 1, there's no commission. Now, it can be very tempting for someone who's a personal representative to attempt to sell the property for sale by technically the owner, so that you can avoid those commission costs. However, there's selling a property is no small feat, no small step, and you definitely can do it on your own, or the person you work with can do it on their own. But they should look at some of the statistics of what happens if you sell the property on your own. You're still managing viewings, still managing from afar quite often, the marketing and other things that can really be taxing if you're not a professional or not used to that. So that's why working with a professional like a cash investor, like Estate Pro Service, is so powerful, because it does allow you to avoid the real estate commissions and still make sure you're getting served. Now, the thing with any cash investor, they should sit with you, or if you're a cash investor, you should sit with the person and definitely show what they may be able to get for top dollar if they sold it themselves, what they may be able to get for top dollar if they sold it as if they did the traditional route and went with the agent, or if they went with you as a cash investor. You want to make sure it's all clear, because it may be their best option to go as a traditional listing or to sell it for themselves. We're not trying to hide, and you should not try to hide any of the options that are there. Your job is to educate, to really listen, and ask questions, and you can educate through those questions that you ask, and then they'll lead you to the options that may best work for them. This is about that person, about them. So we got to make sure that they're the center. So that's number one, no commissions. Number two, there's no waiting. The probate process is already very lengthy and can get very expensive depending on the size of the estate. And when you have the right to be able to sell the property, you don't have to wait any longer for the different stages or steps in the like the distribution phase where people can get their money. You actually can go ahead and sell the property now and be able to help people have access a lot, or at least know what they're gaining a lot sooner. Again, I'm not an attorney or a financial advisor. Often I'm sharing from my experience. So when you sell the property, you can put the property's funds into the estate, and people will know immediately how much they're going to be, well, should be able to know how much they're going to receive. There is contingent again on some of the claims that may be out there, but oftentimes when you're selling into a more traditional route, the timeline could be long, expensive, especially if you're thinking about some other things that you may need to do to maximize the profits, such as maybe rehabbing or marketing or viewing. So with a cash investor, usually it can take days. 3 days. I've actually closed on a deal before, 7 days, 14 days. So in days you can have this property done, and you're not waiting on that side anymore. So that's an awesome thing. Number three, there's really no marketing. So quite often, the great thing about top agents is they're going to come in there with their professionals and make sure they stage the place, make sure they put pictures up, make sure that it looks as great as it can be. Perhaps they might encourage that you paint. All these things are awesome ways to help make sure they maximize the profit. But if time is not your friend, or if the hassle and inconvenience of this is something that you don't want to do, then again, that's why a cash investor is great for you, because they'll take it without having to deal with all of the marketing there. Another thing about marketing is that it can also add up as well. Sometimes the expenses of marketing the property falls on the listing agent, but quite often they will be transferred the cost over to the selling party, you as the personal representative, and the head or manager of the estate. So that's another reason to think about going with a cash buyer, because you won't have to incur that possible expense. Number four, no repairs or no rehabs. Quite often the properties that we're inheriting have been lived in for a long time, and sometimes there's challenges, issues that need to that come up. And if you're selling a traditional route, whether for sale by owner or with the listing agent, quite often an inspection will need to take place, and there may be some concessions that need to happen in order for you to be able to sell the property. And this can get you tangled up for a long time, cause a lot of inconvenience, cause a great amount of money, because you're investing into the property. And it can be a difficult thing for a personal representative, especially if you're a personal representative that's living far away and having to manage this from afar. When you go with a cash buyer, cash investor, like Estate Pro Service, they buy the properties as is. They should be taking the property as is. They should still get an inspection on the property, but that's only so they can know what they're actually buying. They're taking on the risk of this investment, but they don't want to take it on with their eyes closed. But they would not, by and large, would not ask you to make changes or things of nature. Just needs to know what they're getting into. So as is a great option if you're not trying to make repairs. Yep. And so number five, Uncle Sam's going to make their money on these closings. There's transfer taxes, state, federal, and other issues that the license or title company or closing attorneys will need. And this and usually during a traditional sale, both parties split the closing costs, the seller and the buyer. However, for folks who are personal representatives or folks who want to sell to a cash investor, those investors should pay the closing costs. It's like Pace Morby says, if you're taking someone on a date, you don't ask or expect them to pay half on the meal. So that's one thing that's great about cash investors, is that they don't have, there's no closing costs that you have to pay. They'll incur or will incur the closing costs. And that's one of the benefits of selling directly to a cash investor. And so those are 5 things that you, as a personal representative of someone selling a home, or really anyone selling any home, particularly if you're not living there, can consider and think about. And also, if you are someone who talks directly to sellers, there's some options or some things that you may want to present to them to consider, because, oh, excuse me, I keep getting calls over here, but because yeah, we're trying to make their life as convenient as possible through a time that can be very, very challenging already as a personal representative. So again, just to reiterate, 5 reasons that you may want to consider selling to a cash investor is that there's no commissions, there's no waiting, there's no marketing, and there's no repairs. And the last one, number 5, you're not paying any of the closing cost. All right, would love to hear your thoughts or comments. I would love for you to give us a review and let us know what you're thinking over here. Would love for you to also consider being a guest on the show if you have some way related to helping people through their transitions in life. Perhaps you're an estate attorney, perhaps you're a real estate professional, perhaps you're I was about to say sociology, a social worker, or a psychologist or counselor. I would love for us to connect and share and get your thoughts out there in the world. Oh my gosh, my phone is blowing up. Must be some exciting stuff going on over here. So let me get to it and see what's going on. But as I always leave you all, rising tides, it lifts all sails. Cheers.